Malkin now, as we do every week. Michelle, there's a lot being made right now about this sort of hot mic situation where reporters apparently were planning these sort of gotcha questions for Mitt Romney yesterday. Instead of asking, what would you have done differently, it was all about what he did wrong. Let's listen to that.
Yeah.
I would just say, do you regret your question?
Your question? Your statement.
I mean, your statement, not even the tone, because then he can go off on.
And then if he does, I think we should follow up and say, but this morning your answer continuing to send.
But I mean, I just want to make sure that we're just talking about no matter who he calls on, we're covered on the one question that.
Do you stand by your statement, or do you regret your statement?
So that kind of looks to us like a coordination of the mainstream media, and we've talked for a million years on this channel about how the mainstream media definitely tilts to the left. But we had Juan Williams on a little while ago, and he said, sometimes reporters, and he says he's done it as well, they coordinate so that slippery politicians can't get away.
Yeah, well, if it looks, sounds, talks like journo tools for Obama, it is what it is. And I'm glad that Juan Williams is being more candid about the kind of coordination that goes on. It's no surprise, and I think that we have to give credit to new media. It was a young blogger from therightscoop.com who first picked up on this, and it really ballooned yesterday. And finally, the mainstream media is being confronted with something so obvious to those of us who have worked on both sides of the aisle. I've worked in new media, old media. I've worked in dead tree newspaper journalism for 20 years and seen how the sausage is made in these sausage factories. And of course, they think that they can get away with it. But I think this is a different year. If you looked at how carried away they got and how they just simply couldn't help themselves as tools, as stenographers for the people currently in power, to try and embarrass the GOP candidate when the story of the day yesterday was Obama's
Michelle,
dereliction of duty, not Mitt Romney's.
But two things jump out at me about that. Okay, let's say that sometimes there is coordination that goes on. I find that hard to believe, having been a reporter for years. I never ascribed to that at all. But let's just say on its face that happens. Once you ask the question that you've all agreed upon, then don't you move on to question number two? But they didn't. They asked that question 6 or 7 times.
Yeah, that's right. Anybody who watched that knew that this was really an underline and an exclamation point on the obituary of mainstream objective news. And, like I've been in news a long time too, Gretchen, and I have seen this kind of coordination. A couple of years ago, it all came out that many of these so-called mainstream journalists, young liberal progressives who worked at bottom of the barrel blogs and who now are mainstreamed in the Washington Post, for example, were running a list, an email list, where they would talk about coordinating their messages. The list was called Journo List, and they lied about the fact that there were Democratic operatives who were also participating in this. Mainstream journalism is dead, and thank God for outlets like Fox News, the blogs, talk radio, and citizen journalists who can speak truth to power thanks to Twitter and Facebook and alternate ways of getting the message out there. That's how this off-mic audio got out there in the first place.
Yeah, Michelle, you got two things going on right now because you have 56 days until there's an election. I just don't understand why people have forgotten how Senator Kerry, whether you liked it or not, I'm not saying it was wrong, he went after President Bush in the middle of a war about his war strategy. We saw that on a daily basis with Vietnam, I understand, as we play back. These guys went at LBJ. They went at Nixon about his policies. There was no objection when Jimmy Carter was questioned about the hostage crisis. So why all of a sudden are people upset about Mitt Romney?
Well, it's a great question, Brian. And, maybe we should grill some of these journalists. They should be the ones on the podium getting these questions, and we can coordinate them and put them on the spot. But the double standards, they're tripling and quadrupling down on. And I think that we're going to see this all the way through November. And just to underscore something that I said a couple of weeks ago, these are the same people who are going to be running the debates in just a couple of weeks. And I really wish there were more citizen outrage at the way that these things are coordinated.
You know what, and Michelle, clearly Romney's statement was devastating to the President of the United States, where he said, you can't have the embassy sending out these apology notes, because it was devastating to Obama, because now the mainstream media is screaming bloody murder.
Yeah, that's right. And just to take this to more bigger picture, I mean, you've got this petty, partisan, sniping lapdog media, and they cannot see the bigger picture here and provide the proper context and reporting on what's going on in the Middle East now. Here they are all fixated on Terry Jones. They're falling for the propaganda of these Islamic imperialists when it has nothing to do with this obscure internet video, clips of which have been floating around since June, the provenance of which is still under question, and they report it anyway, as if that's what's really going on here, when there's a larger pretext going on and manufacturing. And the fact that they still call these protests when these are violent attacks that have been happening for time immemorial.
When the Coptic Christians were having their churches blown up and murdered, were there riots in the embassies in Washington, D.C., at those countries, or at the Egyptian consulate? No. We take it, we make our opinions, and move on. What is wrong with these people that they can't see? They can see a $2 movie, and all of a sudden, all these years and all this money and all the support we've given them goes out the window. There's got to be some deep thinking about where we go from here.
That's right. And again, remember the pretense, because they will find any excuse to come up and concoct an insult to Islam or an insult to the Prophet Muhammad. And I've talked about this many years, for as long as I've been on this air, whether it was the Muhammad cartoons or the Pope, Oriana Fallaci's novels, Salman Rushdie's work, South Park episodes, for goodness sakes. I mean, there is an American cartoonist who wanted to do Draw Muhammad Day who's still in hiding today because these people cannot tolerate religious diversity.
Yeah, and when you think about all the attacks on Christianity, that we're just supposed to turn a blind eye to it, it's amazing, the dichotomy.
That's right.
Michelle Malkin, we've got to wrap it up. We're up against a hard break. Sorry, we've got a lot of breaking news today, but we'll see you again next week. Thanks so much.
Twitchy.com for more.
You bet.